Hi everyone and welcome. In this recording, I'm going to be speaking about the present moment astrological energies and also what we can expect in the first half of November. This is a very intense, chaotic, emotionally tense time, and even though the previous celestial conversations, especially of the end of the summer and the beginning of the autumn, kind of on one hand gave us a moment of respite, inviting us to basically stabilize ourselves, regardless what that means for everyone. But at the same time, they kind of gave us a very good hint that we are heading towards very turbulent times. One of the ways that basically the astral energy prepared many of us was through dreams. If you just remember your dreams around September, the end of August, and all of October, did you have very powerful, impacting, perhaps dreams that left a very strong imprint on you, impression? Or maybe did you have some recurring dreams where there was a main theme playing out? But of course, other people, especially those who are into any kind of divination, might have received symbols, signs, warning messages through their means of practice, not necessarily that something bad is coming, but rather to prepare themselves for an intense period. We just barely touched November and the intensity is already building up in the sky. Tomorrow we're going to have a very shocking, very chaotic, but also very liberating new moon in the sign of Scorpio, because it holds an exact opposition to Uranus. And regardless of how this plays out in our lives, as I said, it can be surprising, shocking, very chaotic, very random, very unexpected. But all of these elements are basically based on the truth. When something or someone shocks us, it is the truth that actually has this impact on us. Maybe because the truth or what is being revealed is exceeding our expectations, our sense of logic, the intensity that we might have anticipated or not anticipated at all. And regardless of how this hits us and how we process it, ultimately the truth does set us free. It cannot be unknown, unheard, unseen. A moment of maximum truth always takes certain chains off of us, chains of ignorance, chains of blindness, chains of perhaps willing full immersion into something which comes through as escapism. And even though the main theme of Scorpio is pain, in the sense that Scorpio is a very notorious truth-seeking energy, and it kind of works together with pain in the sense that when you dig up something, well, you can imagine that it was hidden for a reason, and when the hidden element becomes that much more obvious, well, it's going to evoke some very strong emotions, pain usually being one of those. But Scorpio also accepts the pain. It is not really opposing it. And ultimately it turns it into one way or another into an advantage, into power, into strength. And on the other hand, Scorpio is also very self-revelatory energy, in the sense that many times the truth is something that just pops up from within us, and it shocks us because we were not aware, or even if we were aware at one point perhaps, we had to distort that awareness in order to use the intensity of the scorpionic energy to a totally different purpose. But, from time to time we get this very strong reality check of what the truth truly is, where everything has started out from, and in those moments we do feel very vulnerable, but it is that vulnerability which kind of helps us transform. Now, let me just give you an example so we can understand how this alchemical cocktail works together. Like the pain, let's say that someone at one point in their life's journey felt very lonely, and that can cause a very strong discomfort. Basically, it's a basic need that is triggered here. So that someone finds a partner, a friend, maybe a romantic relationship or a other type of relationship, and that basic need is met. But as the relationship progresses, there is a moment of betrayal, infidelity, or any kind of emotional crisis, emotional, let's say, disconnection, which causes these feelings. So basically this already triggers in the person a very scorpionic moment, because they might have the tendency to get so very upset at themselves, first of all, for feeling very lonely at a certain stage of their journeys, that they will do everything in their power obsessively because of the pain of betrayal, and because this basic need led them to a much greater problem, as in betrayal, accepting to be vulnerable in front of another person, and this not working out very well. So, it led to a mini trauma. So with this obsessive intensity of Scorpio, that person might want to cover up their basic need of having someone, the loneliness, in such a way that they will fight against their own beings, never showing anyone that they're lonely, that they're vulnerable, and doing everything in their power to show themselves, show the world, show other people, show basically even the divine everyone that they are no longer lonely, and something very positive where I'm enough for myself, and sacred solitude, all those positive coping mechanisms used very obsessively, well, they become a misaligned belief where the person will no longer be connected to their basic need, that loneliness. So basically they distort, they mutate something within themselves which is no longer the truth. It works, it gives them power, it gives them strength. They manage to convince themselves and everyone else in their lives that they're not lonely, that they don't have this basic need, until something happens, this Uranian moment, and the truth is being shown to them in a very direct way. Like, I don't know, for example, they break down and they won't know why, they just cannot have the answers that they seek. They go through a therapist, and the therapist leads them back to the core truth that they're actually lonely within their souls, and all the inner work and self-manipulation and delusion that I'm enough for myself, etc., etc., well, that was basically a lie. So a very painful truth resurfaces, not just that at the very core of their beings they don't want to be alone, and this is a basic need that will not go anywhere regardless, but also all the effort, all the mind games that this person played with themselves to convince themselves and everyone else that they are not like this, and in truth they are like that. So this is like 3 times as painful as it would get. But again, the specific of Scorpio season with Uranus, the truth just comes out, and that is what we need to work with. And also the power of transformation, that we have to transform our own attitude towards ourselves, our own psychological coping skills, in order to truly address the core problem, and not just hide it, not just distort it, not just apply like certain tactics to fool ourselves into thinking that we're something else, that we're healed, that we patched up the wound. So, this is what we can expect playing out in all our lives, one way or another, in this period, especially the first half of November. What is it that we convinced ourselves that we're okay, we are healed, we are doing absolutely fine, and in truth, we're really not, it's just a cover up? This is also a period when certain very heavy feelings are evoked from within us, especially everything that has to do with resentment, where we just cannot accept something that someone did to us, a situation. It can also be resentment to ourselves, to our past choices, or certain choices that life actually forced us to make, and we just couldn't let it go. We just couldn't cope and process. We might hold a resentment towards life. This energy can also draw to the surface a lot of frustration, and this frustration is gonna get so very, very intense around the 10th, 11th of November, well, when Mars in its ancient ruling sign Scorpio, very strong here, holds a square with Saturn, the two malefics basically standing off against each other. Mars in Scorpio is the desire, it is the drive, it is the instinct. I want it, I've worked for it, I've done everything in my power to have it, so why isn't it mine? Regardless of what that it is, a person, a situation, something you want to accomplish, a dream, a goal, whatever that is, why isn't it yours? Why aren't you living it? Saturn can be seen as the limitations, and the limitations are also extremely powerful, and they do make sense. Because Saturn is in its ancient ruling sign of Aquarius, so these limitations aren't basically just, the hardships of life and this and that. They do make rational sense. You can't have this and that because, let's say, it's not the right time. You may have all the skills, for example, but not the diploma, the official degree. Or let's say you don't live in the right community, the right living conditions. Or maybe your own principles, ideals, and morality is stopping you from getting something that you want, being where you want to be, because you would have to go against your own principles, be who you're not actively. So that is an impassable brick wall, an obstacle for a lot of people. So this kind of makes us feel very powerless, very frustrated, very rebellious even against anything that might limit us. And also Mars is in a very delicate place in the sky that astrologers call via combusta, so the path of combustion. And this means it's very, very passionate, it's very singular, it's very active. And when limitations and obstacles and cannot achieve, everything with the cannot Saturn is in the picture, well, that might leave us feeling so frustrated that we might not even be able to control ourselves and our emotions for a short period of time. Mars in the sign of Scorpio is also like the mating call type of energy. Under this sky, no one really wants to be single, no one wants to be alone, no one wants to be lonely. Even those people who naturally are very more than okay, quite comfortable, quite happy alone. The hermit type, the sacred solitude type, the life is an eternal dream type. So this is where this kind of gets everyone a little bit, because this Mars is very instinctual. And everything is connected to Mother Nature. And there are moments when nature says, be in pairs, have a mate. For some people, this is the lower end of this energy where it's like a sexual urge. But for other people, it's like a true soul level mating call where they just want to share with someone. So it's kind of going to be a very difficult period, even from a romantic sense, especially for those who are single, regardless if they're looking or not looking. And because at this time, Mars is very close. Actually, it does hold even a conjunction with Mercury. And that is the energy of strong nostalgia and feelings taking us back to certain points in our lives. Now, of course, some of these memories, some of these empathic echoes, if that makes sense, is not so pleasant, like traumas and all of that. But the irony is that perhaps the painful moments and all of that won't be that big deal because we can cope with it. Because of the Eris Pluto square that was the main theme of all 2021, we're kind of used to random psychological purges, if that makes sense. But the other side of this energy, the more pleasant one, is actually the problem. Because imagine if you're a person of great self-discipline and you know exactly what to do not to allow the frustration or wanting to share something with another person. If you're not letting this get in your way, then imagine just random nostalgic moments of cuddles, embraces, sharing with someone, laughter, not being alone and enjoying it just invade your mind and you cannot stop it. For some people, it will be actually the pleasant memories, the true nostalgic moments, that will be the tricksters that will just set off this Mars. And on its own, Mars in the sign of Scorpio is always trigger. This month will trigger us in so very many shapes and forms. This is where we might not be able to help being triggered, but what we do have power over is our reaction. The trigger, it just happens within us, but how we respond to it is always our choice. And that is where Saturn and Mars square can actually help us, because due to another person, what you would accept to be done to you, and if you take this principle quite seriously and apply it in everyday situation, it can truly be a positive game changer in any sense. Sometimes this principle might require for you to stand up for yourself, to assert yourself, because you would naturally expect another person to do so. So this can always be very helpful, especially under Scorpio season. Another very important energy that is going to be part of our lives for quite some time now is going to be Venus in the sign of Capricorn. And this is the part of the sky where she'll go retrograde as well. So that's why we will have a lot of this energy for a prolonged period of time. With every Venus retrograde, we will have to ask ourselves the question, what do we love and why and how? Do we truly love it, or is it just an illusion? And if we truly love it, and it can be a person, a place, an activity, it can be absolutely anything. Is it worth the sacrifice? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the effort? What does it add to my life, to my well-being? All of these are going to be big themes of this Venus retrograde season. But before we get there, we will just have the basic expression of Venus in the sign of Capricorn, which is, Venus all about love and value and even self-worth and everything of that nature. But in Capricorn, it needs to be real, it needs to be applicable, it cannot be just a feeling, it cannot just be simply an emotion, it has to be something which is one way or another either palpable or palpably expressed. So Venus in this part of the sky, she tends to take things very, very seriously. She wants all the ideals that she's usually notorious for in other places in the sky, to be perfectly valid even in physical reality, in an applicable area of our lives, that which is susceptible to materialism. Perhaps this is the best word for this. Let me just give you a rather silly example. I think that I'm beautiful and good looking. A Venusian expression, of course. But if I actually want to see if this is applicable and real in physical reality, well, I can put a selfie or a picture of myself up on the internet and see what happens. And of course, if at least one other person shares my opinion, that is already Venus in the sign of Capricorn, because there is a confirmation to what I believe in physical reality. And this is important because this adds to the Martian intensity in the sign of Scorpio. Venus is the passive element where Mars is the active one. And that means whatever we seek, whatever we desire, whatever we are working on Mars, whatever we are focusing our intention on, we wanna get it, live it, feel it in a very earthly way. Venus in the sign of Capricorn. Now this can be used in a very empowering way as well, because Scorpio is a mystical, metaphysical, parapsychological strength and power, actively spiritual type of energy. So that means that the spirituality isn't just a source of wisdom and healing, etc., but we have a power within it. And that means transmutation, manifestation. That means getting what we desire through the strength of our psyche, our willpower, Mars. Where Scorpio is very fertile in intent, in attraction, basically the power of attraction. Capricorn is the sign of manifestation, the stage, the earthly sphere where the spirit takes shape and form. So we can use the scorpionic intensity, even its negative expressions like the frustration, the impatience, feeling so very intensely ready to live, to taste, to experience, to have, etc. We can use all of that as fuel to attract what we need, what we desire in our lives, rather than to leave it in a stage of frustration where it basically eats us up from the inside. It is like the bad expression of the inner fire, where it kind of burns us, consumes us, it poisons us. And we take that energy, that fiery energy, the passion, and project it, point it onto getting what we want in any way, shape, or form that we can. And this is really important, because otherwise, both this scorpionic intensity, because as we progress into Scorpio season, we will have Mars, Mercury, and the Sun in this part of the sky. So that's a very heavily concentrated mix of energy right there. And if this becomes much more frustration than ambition and motivation, then not only are we going to block ourselves, our progress, our momentum, but it will also be like fighting against the astrology of the present moment, where we simultaneously have the Eris and Pluto square that has the need for change written all over it, but we also have the activating and growing Saturn-Uranus square, which will be exact on Christmas Eve. And personally, especially, that is out with the old and in with the new, out of our comfort zones and step into our futures. So both of these celestial dances combined with the scorpionic theme makes this desire to have this breakthrough, to advance, to basically leap of faith or quantum leap towards our futures, at least in an expression that we can have something to work with, this will be like a very, very strong urge that can drive us insane. And if we allow this to fester, not to be able to be projected outward from within us, well then we will create blockages, we will manifest our fears rather than anything constructive, and it will feel like we're taking big steps backwards, going back to issues that maybe we recently solved, handled, where we had karmic completions in our lives. So it will be really, really bad if we stay stuck in this energy, if we allow it to turn into depression, frustration, anger, rage, resentment, hatred, self-loathing, self-victimization. So whatever we do, we must do everything with our power not to get there. Because if that gets to the stage of manifestation, if that makes sense, nothing good will happen. And we must also keep in mind that parallel to this, on a 3D level, the world is gonna be, outside on the world stage internationally, COVID and all that, it's gonna be full chaos. But of course, if we muster the strength and wisdom and self-discipline and the awareness necessary to know how very important in this period it is for us to work with ourselves, to allow that which we can allow, to block out that which necessarily needs to be blocked, to manage our inner resources, our energy, our emotional balance, stability, to manage it like a really diligent and responsible and learned and experienced manager, then we actually are going to have a lot of breakthroughs. If we tap into the creative side of chaos, we can't avoid chaos at this time, that's pretty clear. But what we can do is just to tap into its creative expression, where chaos comes and leaves its imprint, but we make order out of that. Whatever it changes, whatever it creates, whatever new it brings, we try to make order, to give that a reason, to give that a shape and form, basically to work with it. If we manage to do that, that means that we're truly going with the flow and we're truly alchemizing and using the very highest end of the scorpionic energy, which leads to rebirth, which leads to long-lasting change and prosperity and healing and personal power. One that we can even share with others, with our loved ones. This is exactly the kind of period in life when there's that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This is what is going to happen to us one way or another in at least one or even more areas of our lives. Either something just comes into perspective which we had no clue, a truth or something which wants to work with the truth, and that will be the element which must not kill us, but rather make us stronger. But the kill us is very symbolic, because the truth does end something, a misaligned belief, for example, a way of perceiving the world, a perspective. So something does die with the truth. But instead of feeling sorry for ourselves and embracing this as a big help, as a lesson, as the universe wanting to be truthful with us, then we turn it into strength. And also, one of the coping skills, regardless of how this manifests in your life and even collectively to the Uranus and Saturn square, is that sometimes the future is always totally outside our control, mysterious, unknowable, unfathomable even. So when we're faced with that, the only choice we have is to surrender control and step into it. Because otherwise we will just condemn ourselves to living in the past. And that is a bad choice in the sense that in the universe everything changes, nothing lasts forever, not even traditions. As we can see in the fashion industry, even when trends return from the past, well, they still take a reborn form. They still come in a new shape and form. So even if your main goal under this Scorpio season and the month of November and all of this year actually is to preserve something, maybe for you personally, that is the big picture, that is the big goal. You want to preserve something very important to you for the future, for the long term. That is no problem at all. This energy doesn't disadvantage you as long as you allow the act of preservation to also rebirth that which you want to hold on to. Like, let me just give an example. You don't want a career change because your career is everything to you and it makes you happy, etc. But you will still need to go with the flow, with the modern trends, in the sense that you will not be able to practice as you did, let's say, 10 years ago. Readaptation is a must. And ultimately this is what Uranus wants to tell us, wants to teach us, wants to basically provoke out of us. And change and readaptation doesn't necessarily have to involve a copycat kind of attitude, but rather an invention to allow something new to be born out of the inner chaos, to do it your way, to be a trendsetter, to be an innovator. And with this Saturn and Uranus square, for some people the innovation, the unusual, the weird perhaps, is exactly to go back to the very, very roots. Like, let me just give you an example so we can understand this energy better. Let's say that your hobby or passion, what you're doing is to create, let's just say, journals, handmade journals or something like that. And instead of just doing what everyone else does, you make your own paper. Like ancients have done, let's say, 2000 or many thousands of years ago, as it started in ancient Egypt, for example. That will make it, on one hand, based on truth, Uranus, because that's how it all started. On the other hand, it will be revolutionary because no one else does that. And if you sell it, let's say via the internet or something like that, it's also perfectly in the now because everyone does that. Everyone sells mainly on the internet. And you know, very many times when we are really skilled and talented at something and we really, really try to push hard, to work for our places out there in the world, as in professionally, let's say. And if you kind of notice that many times when you want to push extremely hard, fate kind of blocks you and you might not understand, is the universe against your passions and hobbies and stuff like that? Because it's so easy to misinterpret and misunderstand. Whenever you are more motivated, there's a big blockage. It's almost like bad intent, that's how it can come across. But every time, just think about what the universe, or maybe what your higher self truly wants to tell you with that. The blockages usually represent the norm. You're doing everything that another successful person is, and you're not getting in anywhere with that. That isn't like the universe is against you. The universe is telling you, you're not meant for the norm. You are one of those professionals, let's say, who is able to invent, to improvise, to add a very, very unique touch onto the domain, the industry, whatever you're doing. And because you have this potential, the universe wants to manifest itself through you. It has so very many people who do the copycat, who are really serious and talented and etc. professionals, just that they hold the tradition, if that makes sense. But those who are actually unusual, who have the mind capable of inventing something new and the courage to do it, well, for those people, if they don't express themselves, if they don't express their Uranian spirit, the ingenuity, the inventivity, well then their success means nothing for the universe. Their success lies in them getting out of their comfort zones. As unusual, as shocking, as a big leap of faith that might require, that's exactly their key to success. And that is exactly why all the blockages and challenges, because if the universe does this, it will still provoke you one way or another to, at least once in your life, do something so radical that it's totally out of your comfort zone, maybe even out of your league, and that's all it needs. That one moment is more than enough to just manifest its uniqueness, that which it is probably pumping inside of you. And with this Saturn and Uranus square, well, you know that it is inspiring you, motivating you, and for some people actually forcing you hard to do something unique, unusual, perhaps a little bit daring. But there is also Saturn, so if it's not totally irrational, crazy, it doesn't go against morality and decency, and of course it's not a mockery of the industry. Saturn is always a very serious power player, so it allows playfulness, but not to the degree where it becomes like more of humor and joke. And also, the reason I'm saying this is because this new moon has experiment written all over it. And maybe this is one of the ways this Uranus can surprise you if you try and experiment with innovation in regardless which area of life this falls into. Maybe you will be very pleasantly surprised by an unexpected breakthrough. But more important than this Scorpio new moon is gonna be the Taurus lunar eclipse taking place on the 19th of November, because that will be a massive karmic energy, a completion, a moment of maximum truth, maybe a sudden realization even regarding something either financial of nature, Taurus, maybe your self-worth, values in your life, your physical expression of beauty, anything that has to do with your value system. So something is going to be put on the table, something is going to be revealed, something might be even gained karmically. But of course, with every eclipse, lunar eclipse, so full moon, especially that this moon is going to be illuminated by the sun in Scorpio, it also might be a purge, it might be an elimination, a loss. But if it's a loss you're definitely going to be thankful for, because it frees up some space, either psychologically speaking, spiritually, emotionally, or even physically in your life. So this concludes today's recording. I know that these are some very difficult weeks that we are heading into, and also emotions are gonna run very, very high. With Mars in Via Combusta, and Mercury of course as well, conflicts, angry words, doubts, misinterpretations, confrontations even are very, very possible. We can also expect a lot of surprises from our friends, from everyone who belongs in our life one way or another. The Scorpionic new moon opposite Uranus, that is like coming out of the closet, both literally or symbolically, for everyone in their own different and unique ways. People are just gonna share with us things that they have been keeping secret for perhaps tens of years. So it will definitely be a surprising period in so very many different ways. And sometimes that secret might actually transform everything. But always remember that the truth is truly our friend, never ever our enemy. So thank you so much for listening. I wish everyone a blessed and prosperous new moon tomorrow. Until next time, bye for now.